Welcome to the 2020 New Testament Challenge. Today we're in Acts chapter 10. Now there's 260 chapters in the New Testament and there's 260 weekdays in a year. So what we're doing is we're reading one chapter a day, Monday through Friday, taking the weekends off. And as we do, we'll have gone through the entire New Testament this year of 2020. And each day, Monday through Friday, we're doing a devotional that goes along with something within that chapter. Today, we're in Acts chapter 10, and we're talking about prayer today. Prayer is a powerful tool that God uses, not only to speak to us, but to change us and to change the world. Here, Peter is changed, Cornelius is changed, his family is changed, and the world is changed, all because of prayer. In chapter 10, verse 1, we read, "At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly." Within the book of Acts, Gentiles, non-Jewish people, were looked at as three different ways. They were put into three different categories. One, they were pagans. They were hedonistic. They just followed their own passions and desires, their sinful lusts, and they were considered heathens. Then there were the God-fearers. God-fearers believed in Jehovah God. They believed in the God of the Jews. They believed that he was the one true creator of all things. So they also gave generously and they prayed regularly to God. But they did not follow the Jewish customs or the Jewish law. Then there were the Jewish proselytes. Those were Gentiles who became Jews and then followed all the rules, the regulations, and the laws of the Jews. Here, Cornelius and his family were God-fearers. They prayed regularly, they gave generously, and they followed the one true God. At 3 p.m, Cornelius was praying. This was his regular routine. And he was praying, and in verse 3 it says, "One day about 3 p.m, he had a vision. He distinctly saw an angel of God who came to him and said, 'Cornelius.' Cornelius stared at him in fear. 'What is it, Lord?' he asked. And the angel answered, 'Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a remembrance before God. Now send men to Joppa and bring back a man named Simon who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea.'" He sent for Peter, and his life was going to be changed. At the same time, in verse 9, Peter was praying about noon. Now, the men were on their way to see Peter. Peter was waiting for lunch to get ready, and so he had nothing better to do, so he thought, "I'm just going to go up onto the roof and pray. I want to be in God's presence." While he was there praying, he had a vision. 3 different times a sheet came down, and there were things on that sheet that Peter had never eaten before. God spoke and said, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Peter said, "No, I have never eaten any of these unclean things that are on this sheet." And then the sheet went back. 3 times it came down. As Peter was wondering after the 3rd time what all this meant, the men from Cornelius' house came. Peter heard what they had said, and then the Spirit said, "Go with these men." So Peter, the next day, got up and went to Cornelius' house. When he got there, the house was full of people. Cornelius had invited all kinds of people to be there to hear what Peter had to say. He was expecting something great to happen. God was on the move. Well, Peter started to share with the group how Jesus rose from the dead and that Jesus was the Messiah and they needed to give their lives over to him. They believed the message and the Holy Spirit came and filled all of those that were in the house, and Peter and all the Jews that were with him were amazed that the gift of God had been given to the Gentiles as well. Then Peter said, "God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean." That was the meaning of the sheet that came down 3 different times. Peter got the message. And then he realized that God was pouring his Spirit out upon Gentiles as well. What does this mean? It all started with prayer. For Cornelius, it was just a regular routine that he had. 3 p.m, he was praying and God spoke. Peter just went up to spend some time with God. No particular reason, just nothing else to do, and God spoke. The power of just spending time with God in prayer changes everything. A.W. Tozer once said, "To desire revival and at the same time neglect personal prayer and devotion is to wish one way but go another." That is so true. If we want to have revival take place, we need to be in prayer. If we want to see the hand of God move, we need to pray. Everything starts and ends with prayer. For Peter, it was just one of the things that he was doing at the time. For Cornelius, it was part of his regular routine, but God spoke. God can speak anytime in any way, but we need to spend time if we're going to hear him speak. Corrie ten Boom once asked the question, is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire? Prayer should be our steering wheel. It should be the first thing we do, not the last. Thank you for joining the 2020 New Testament Challenge.